Information on the environment of the Southeast, student handout 3.2a. Physical features. The Southeast region stretches from the Atlantic Ocean westward to the dry lands beyond the Trinity River in present-day Texas, and from the Gulf of Mexico northward to the present-day states of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, and North Carolina. The varied geography of this area includes coastal plain with saltwater marshes, grasses, and stands of cypress, subtropical Everglades, flatlands with fertile soil, and the Blue Ridge, Smoky, and Cumberland Mountains. Climate. This area has warm, humid summers and cool winters. It receives moderate rainfall throughout the year. Water availability. Water is plentiful and can be found in the many swamps and rivers of the region. The Atlantic Ocean borders the eastern side of this region. The Gulf of Mexico borders the southern side. Animal life. A wide variety of animals live in this region, ranging from the woodland animals to swamp animals. Wild boars, opossums, raccoons, muskrats, and otters are common animals found in the southwest region. Alligators and crocodiles also make their homes in the region, but are found mostly in the swamps. Vegetation. The region is mostly forest with broad-leaf deciduous trees. Some evergreens like the white cedar and sand pine grow in the drier parts, and have heavy undergrowth of shrubs and palmettos. Many kinds of cypress trees grow throughout this region. Native Americans in their environment, the Southeast. Student handout 3.2d. The Seminole people originally lived in Georgia and Mississippi, but were forced into Florida by the Europeans. The name Seminole, which dates from about 1775, means runaway or pioneer. It was probably derived by the Spaniards from their word cimarron, which means wild. The Spanish were in Florida at the time when many Seminole migrated there. Housing. The Seminole lived in small buildings called chickees. These buildings were framed with cypress, pine, or palmetto logs, thatched with palmetto fronds, and had raised platforms 3 feet off the ground. The raised floor allowed air to circulate and cool the house by ventilation above and below the living area. It also protected the inhabitants from swamp insects, snakes, alligators, and flood tides. Clothing. Men wore a simple fringe of shredded mulberry bark from a belt that was often made of snakeskin. Men also wore garters on their legs. Women wore a short skirt of deerskin or of Spanish moss as clothing during the summer months. In the winter, they added a tunic of woven mulberry bark. Food. Corn was the main food source and was central to Seminole culture and religion. Some deer and shorebirds were also eaten. Even after the introduction of sweet potatoes and fruit trees by Europeans, corn remained the most important food for the Seminole. For other tribes in the region, deer was a staple. All the tribes in the region cultivated tobacco, which they traded, smoked at ceremonies, or used for their own personal enjoyment. Recreation. Men often played lacrosse not only for entertainment, but also as part of religious rituals and ceremonies. The Seminole played the game in its oldest form, where every player had 2 sticks and each team had 60 men. The ball could not be touched by the player's hands and was to be passed from player to player until it was thrown through the goal of the opposite team. The game was an excellent opportunity for the men to display their speed and skill. Seminole had plenty of water for their crops. The other essential element that they prayed for was the sun. Every morning the men greeted the rising sun by smoking a pipe of tobacco. The biggest ceremony each year was the busk, or Green Corn Festival, celebrated when the new corn ripened. It marked the beginning of a new year, normally at the full moon in July or August. Indians congregated and for 8 days participated in ancient rituals including cleansing in a hothouse, plunging in a cold stream, breaking old pottery, extinguishing old fires, lighting new fires, and feasting on freshly roasted green corn. Section 1.12, Native Americans of the Southeast. This is the textbook reading. The Southeast cultural region stretched from the southern part of the Ohio Valley to the Gulf of Mexico and from Texas to the Atlantic Ocean. The region's fertile coastal plains, river valleys, mountains, and swamps all have long, warm, humid summers and mild winters. In this green countryside, the people of the southeast found growing crops fairly easily. Towns built around mounds. Some southeastern peoples built towns dominated by large earthen mounds. The first mounds were burial sites. Centuries later, people made mounds several stories high as platforms for temples. Building these mounds took months, even years, because people had to move the dirt one basketful at a time. Workers building mounds had no time to help grow or find food, but southeastern groups had developed a type of corn that grew so fast they could harvest 2 crops a year. Farmers raised enough food to feed the people building the mounds. A single southeastern town might have had 2 to 12 mounds arrayed around a central town plaza. Around these mounds, people clustered their houses. They built their houses from strips of young trees woven into a rectangular frame and plastered with clay. Roofs were pointed and made of leaves. A fertile region. Beyond their homes, field lay in all directions. With the region's long growing season, southeastern people relied on corn, beans, squash, pumpkins, and sunflowers for most of their food. Women worked the fields with hoes made of stone, shell, or animal shoulder blades fastened to wooden handles. Men sometimes hunted using blowguns for squirrels, rabbits, and turkeys, and bows and arrows for large animals like deer. They even brought home alligators and turtles. To complete their varied diet, women gathered edible plants like sweet potatoes, wild rice, and persimmons. Because they wore simple, short deerskin skirts, they didn't spend much time making clothing. Instead, they used stones, shells, feathers, pearls, bones, and clay to fashion rings, earrings, arm rings, and hairpins. The caption says, the Southeast cultural region includes river valleys, mountains, coastal plains, and swamps. The mild climate allowed Native Americans of the Southeast to grow corn, beans, squash, and other crops.